an astonishing number of Honda Jazz owners buy another, and the improved third generation version we're looking at here aims to keep them loyal. Smarter looks and the option of a perkier 1.5 litre iVTEC engine aim to widen the Super Mini segment customer demographic. But as before, this Jazz will primarily sell on the back of its unrivaled practicality. For very good reasons. This is the Super Mini that industry insiders frequently recommend.
Super Minis, you might have decided, are mostly much the same. Here's one though that's different, better in the way that it offers the largest and cleverest cabin in the class. That's always been the key selling point of Honda's Jazz, and it continues to be with this facelifted third generation version. Globally, that's been a winning formula for Honda in the small car segment. This model line, which is marketed as the Fit in some countries, having sold over 7 million units worldwide since the first generation version of this Super Mini was introduced back in 2001. That original car was followed by a Mark II design in 2008, then this third generation version in 2015. Throughout, the buying demographic has stayed pretty much constant, core customers tending to be retired folk looking for a versatile, undemanding, quality, compact means of transport. Now, unfortunately, there haven't been enough of these kind of people for the Jazz to sell in the kinds of numbers Honda would ideally like. Hence the need for this facelifted Mark III model, which was introduced here in early 2018. It features sharper looks and, to try to snare younger buyers, the option at the top of the range of a more dynamic sports variant, and that's powered by a new 130 PS 1.5 litre iVTEC petrol engine. Otherwise, though, the recipe here is much as it was. In fact, it'll be almost exactly as it was for the majority of Jazz customers who will continue to chop further down the lineup and choose the 102 PS 1.3 litre iVTEC petrol unit that this third generation design was originally launched with. Whatever your choice beneath the bonnet, there is, as before, the option of either manual or CVT auto transmission. Fortunately, what isn't optional is the brilliant Magic Seat system that's made possible by the relocation of the fuel tank into the centre of the car. Now, the space that this frees up allows the Japanese brand to claim the Jazz as a model that's able to redefine what a Super Mini can be. We're also promised agile handling, courtesy of the advanced global compact platform, lots of equipment and very class competitive levels of camera-driven safety kit. Sounds promising, doesn't it? Let's put this Honda to the test. If proof were needed that a satisfying road-going experience need have little to do with ultimate power, then the various versions of the Jazz certainly provide it. Engine refinement and ride quality over poor surfaces certainly could be better, but we found ourselves to be largely forgiving of these issues, having balanced them against a number of this car's key attributes. Things like the near-perfect driving position, the smooth, willing nature of the iVTEC variable valve timing petrol engines, and best of all, the brilliantly feelsome quality of the manual transmission that'll see you shifting just for the fun of it. Why can't other brands produce gear changes good as this? There are 6 speeds to play with, and you'll get plenty of use out of them because the lack of a turbo here means that frequent cog swapping is needed to maintain anything approaching rapid forward motion. And yes, even in the top sport variant that we're trying today, which uses a 130 PS 1.5 litre power plant introduced as part of this third generation design's model updates. In a manual sport variant, 62 miles an hour can be reached in 8.7 seconds. That's nearly 3 seconds quicker than you'll manage with the lesser 102 PS 1.3 litre engine that most buyers choose. Whichever iVTEC unit you go for, top speed is pegged at 118 miles an hour. Like many previous iVTEC Honda units, these two have to be revved quite a lot if you're going to get all they've got. And that's an attribute that's rather at odds with the way that typically more mature Jazz owners like to drive. The modest pulling power on offer, 123 Newton meters of torque in the 1.3 and 155 in the 1.5, isn't all delivered until you thrash the thing up to 5,000 RPM. Now, to put that into perspective, the 1 litre TSI 3-cylinder turbo engine you'll get on arrival, say, at Ibiza or Volkswagen Polo develops everything from just 1400 RPM. In other words, if you're going to push along a bit in this car, you have to adopt a somewhat different style of driving. If you choose to pay extra for the CVT automatic gearbox and you need to get somewhere quickly, an engine revving will certainly come as part and parcel of your progress, often in an auto Jazz without much notable impact on overall speed. That's no matter how much you click up and down on the steering wheel mounted paddles. Now this is one of those rubber belt driven auto boxes, and like all transmissions of that type, it doesn't take very kindly to being hurried, emitting the usual strange CVT whine under hard acceleration, despite Honda's efforts to improve things with a more natural multi-gear feel. Around town, the whole setup is, of course, far more in its comfort zone, and it really comes into its own, shifting smoothly and delivering considerably better levels of efficiency than the manual model can manage. Unless you really are urban bound, though, we'd urge you to stick with a manual Jazz model. Get used to the engine's characteristics, and the whole package can actually feel reasonably responsive, with decently feelsome steering and plenty of grip through the corners thanks to a standard agile handling assist system. That's Honda's version of the kind of torque vectoring setup that they were now increasingly seeing on many compact family cars. During tight cornering speed, this imperceptibly brakes the wheel on the inside of a curve, and when power is applied, the excess torque then flows to the outer wheel that can better use it, and that helps to maximise traction and makes the car steer through the bend precisely and power out of it more quickly. To really feel the benefit of all this, though, you'll probably have to drive in a manner that typical Jazz owners would rather frown on. Now, these people are really going to like the intelligent speed limiter system that's included as standard beyond entry-level trim. Now, this works in conjunction with the traffic sign recognition system, and the setup knows what the prevailing speed limit is, and it limits your pace accordingly, so there's no chance of absent-mindedly creeping past 30 miles an hour and getting zapped by a roadside camera. Fortunately, you can turn the limiter off, and to be completely honest, we have done quite often, because when it's activated, it's really not weak in the face of bullying. If you persist long enough on the accelerator, the car will eventually release the system and give in to your mad, illegal desires, but only after a standoff period in which lights flash and warning chimes ring out in shrill protest. Other writers have speculated on a later version of this model that further expresses its dismay over such complete irresponsibility by hooking up with the car's internet-enabled infotainment touchscreen and instantly shaming you on social media. Such a development wouldn't surprise us. This improved version of the Mark III model Jazz has a slightly more mature, sophisticated look than the earlier car, thanks to styling changes that align it more closely with the current 10th generation Civic. It's now just a little bit more grown up, and that'll suit the target market. The main alterations have been made here at the front, where this car gains the so-called solid wing face styling package we first saw on the CR-V. The front bumper now has sharper sculpting too, with more aggressive contours around these corner vents. Top models get full LED headlamps as well. If you go for this sport version, you'll find a thin red-finished front splitter added beneath the lower grille. More sport-specific touches reveal themselves once you move to the side. Black painted door mirrors, side sill skirts, and these eye-catching Berliner black 16-inch alloy wheels. Otherwise, the profile perspective is unchanged, and it's dominated by this accentuated crease that rises from behind the front wheel arch and broadens on its upwardly rising journey through the door handles to the tail lamp cluster. Further down, this lower side sill swage line aims to give the flanks some shape. It is more important, though, to note the overall length of this model, which increased quite a bit in the transition from the second generation version to this third generation design. Measuring in at just under 4 metres, this car's easily as large as a Civic from the next class up would have been a decade ago. At the rear, the main change lies with the shallower, lower corner grille sections, emphasised on this sport model by this red-trimmed triple-straight lower bumper diffuser. At this level in the range, you get a tailgate roof spoiler too, to top off the near-vertical rear window that's flanked by these angular combination lamps. Time to take a seat inside. Now, we've always thought that Honda's very good at front of cabin design. Other manufacturers might deliver classier ambiances and higher quality materials, but in terms of driving comfort and ease of use, this Japanese brand just seems to be more precisely tuned in than most when it comes to creating an at-the-wheel experience that feels just right from the moment you set off. And here too, you get that feeling. True, it's still not the classiest interior you'll find in this segment. There are far too many scratchy plastics and the silver trimming doesn't look especially convincing. But if you're able to stretch to this top sport model, you'll find that this variant's smart orange stitching lifts things a bit. It's more important to note, though, that the Jazz cabin is one of the best designed interiors you'll find. It offers a sense of airy spaciousness thanks to big front quarter windows and the large windscreen that meets the roof panel a long way rearward. The ergonomics aren't perfect, of course. Taller drivers might wish for a little more rearward seat travel, and you might find on longer trips that these seats lack a bit of thigh support. There is enough adjustment here, though, for most drivers to quickly find a very comfortable driving position. That'll see the beautifully weighted gear stick falling ideally to hand. Through the 3-spoke multifunction steering wheel, you're presented with a prominent speedometer that's deeply recessed into the silver bezel binnacle, and it's flanked by 2 smaller circular gauges. The left-hand one shows revs, and the right-hand one is a TFT screen that shows key driving data. Anything that this display can't tell you will be covered by a glance at this centre panel. It's angled towards the driver and it incorporates the key addition to the interior of this 3rd generation Jazz model, this 7-inch Honda Connect colour infotainment touchscreen. Now, provided you avoid entry-level trim, this Android-based setup is standard across the range. It controls the stereo and informational functions, it deals with the optional navigation system, and it provides full internet browsing when you're stationary. A button on the left of the steering wheel allows you to quickly flick through the navigation, the audio and phone functions. As for the screen, well, it can attract reflections, but it should feel just like your smartphone to use thanks to familiar pinch and swipe functionality. The MirrorLink system is built in, and that allows you to mirror your mobile handset screen display and gain access to its applications as long as you own an Android phone. Apple users remain ignored. You can download your favourite apps onto the touchscreen via the Honda App Center, and in fact, one key app, Aha, will come preloaded with the system. This gives you access to thousands of radio stations and entertainment options, spanning everything from music to news, podcasts and audiobooks, plus social media and location-based services. The integrated interface should make finding everything from a Twitter account to weather updates easy enough for even the most committed technophobe to master. And Aha also includes point of interest searches, helping users locate things like nearby restaurants and hotels. It all works pretty well, providing you can overlook the fact that the graphics just aren't as sophisticated as you'll find on many rivals. Other than that, our only real issue is that the controls for this screen are very touch sensitive. That makes some of the functions a bit trickier to activate on the move than conventional switches and buttons would be. So you have to be ultra precise touching the on-screen icons, otherwise your commands will go ignored. Over-the-shoulder vision is best in class thanks to the glassy body, but even so, all-round parking sensors come as standard, providing you avoid entry-level trim. As for cabin practicality, well, that's not too bad. A large cup holder to the right of the wheel is convenient for the driver, but it blocks the air vent, so you might be better off using these two here at the bottom of the centre stack. Just in front of them is an open area that's clearly intended for your phone because USB and 12-volt ports are provided, along with an HDMI point. There's also a coin tray and a small compartment just here behind the gear stick, and a deep lidded storage box behind the handbrake, which acts as an armrest. It incorporates a USB port and it's big enough to accommodate a tablet. The glove box, that's acceptably sized, but there's no overhead compartment for your sunglasses. The door bins are small, and there's certainly no opportunity for under-seat storage. That's thanks to the positioning of the fuel tank underneath these seats. Still, that placement delivers the huge benefits in cabin versatility that we'll see further back. Time to take a seat in the rear. Now, the Jazz has always been the most spacious car in its class, and thanks to the extra 30mm of wheelbase length that was designed into this third generation model, it still is. Now, no Super Mini is ever going to be truly suitable for 3 adults in the back, but if you absolutely have to take 3 fully sized people, then they'll be more comfortable in the back of this Honda than they would be in any other car in the segment. The low centre transmission tunnel helps here. The space on offer for your knees is truly impressive for a Super Mini sector model. A Honda somewhat ambitiously claims that there's more of it than you'll get in the Mercedes S-Class. Well, whether that's true or not, we're talking near Civic standards of backseat space here. And that's something that's further accentuated by this relatively lofty ceiling height. A seat back pocket is provided only on the left-hand side, and you only get that with the plusher models. Still, there are bottle holders in the doors, and there's a reclining rear seat too, which is a boon on longer trips. What really marks this Jazz apart from its contemporaries, though, is the packaging brilliance that continues to allow it to stand out. That's made possible by the way that the fuel tank has been positioned under the front seats to liberate the floor of the cabin and allow the seats to be folded into all sorts of permutations. Let's take just one of them, the so-called refresh mode. So people in the back, exhausted on a longer trip, would use this when there's no one in the front passenger seat. Now, this setting allows the front seat back to be reclined into a flat position, meeting the rear seat base. The result is a creation of what Honda calls the couch, which is 1,580mm in length. Perhaps, though, you're in need of greater practicality, specifically for the carriage of the kind of tall items that you normally wouldn't expect to be able to accommodate in a car like this. Maybe a small potted tree that you bought from the garden centre, or perhaps a bulky item of electrical equipment. Then that's when you use the Magic Seat Tall mode, where the front of the rear seat base rises up and can be locked in position to leave a cargo height of 1,280mm from floor to ceiling. And that allows the object in question to be placed in behind the front seats. The other two Magic Seat settings relate to the more conventional cargo configurations that we'll have a look at now. Raise the rear hatch and you'll note the wide cargo opening and the impressively low loading lip that paved the way towards a class-leadingly large 354-litre boot. This means that there's nearly 30 litres more room than you get from the Super Minis that otherwise offer most space in this class, Skoda's Fabia and Hyundai's i20. And it's a lot more than most other rivals in this sector can offer. You're looking at about 20% more room than you get in the Renault Clio or the Seat Ibiza, and nearly 30% more than is offered by segment leaders like Ford's Fiesta, Vauxhall's Corsa or Volkswagen's Polo. There's also compartmentalised space beneath the boot floor. Not impressed altogether, though, by the fact that no bag hooks are provided here, and you only get a couple of floor-mounted tie-down points. But let's say you need more room and you want to push forward the 60/40 split folding rear seats, for example, to store something like a bicycle. That's when you move into the Magic Seat System's utility mode. And the first thing you notice with that is the ease of the folding process. Now, sometimes with Super Minis, you have to mess around pulling the seat bases forward before you can drop the rear backrest. And that sometimes has to have the rear head restraints detached too. Or if not that, you could find yourself stuck with a backrest that simply flops forward onto a fixed seat base, which then denies you a properly flat loading floor. Here, you only have to release a simple lever mechanism, push forward from the rear, and just watch as the backrest and the seat base retract together into the rear footwell in one quick, fluid motion. Now that creates a 1,505mm long flat floor and a total capacity that measures in at 897 litres. If you were able to load right up to the roof, that figure would increase to 1,312 litres. So yes, you can store something as bulky as a bike. And longer items too. If you're not using the front passenger seat, there's the option to recline that as part of the final Magic Seat Long mode. Now, with that done, items as long as 2,480mm can be accommodated, and that's enough for the more adventurous members of the mature Jazz customer fraternity to fit in things like a pair of downhill skis or maybe even a small kayak. Yes, in a Super Mini, you'd never have thought it possible. Honda Jazz pricing sits mainly in the £14,000 to £18,000 bracket. It's based around a single 5-door body style. The 3 core trim levels, S, SE and EX, are all based around a single 1.3-litre iVTEC petrol engine with 102 PS. For this facelifted range, Honda's added a further top sport level of spec, and that comes only with the 130 PS 1.5-litre iVTEC petrol power plant that we've been trying here. That's priced from just over £17,000. Both units can be ordered with the option of CVT automatic transmission for a further £1,100. Now, you might think that Honda is severely limiting itself by not offering a wider variation of Jazz derivatives, but that would be to slightly misunderstand the market. The vast majority of sales in the Super Mini segment go to 5-door petrol models offered by us around 100 PS. So arguably, by focusing most of its efforts in this area, this Japanese brand's being rather clever. Cleverness that could, though, be completely undone by unrealistic pricing, and that is something that Honda has been guilty of in the past with its mainstream models. This time around, though, the company does seem to have pitched this car about right. Now, yes, you can find plenty of feebly performing, cheaper petrol Super Minis which will cost you less, but if, to be fair to Honda, you limit your search to contenders with comparable power outputs and performance, then you really have to say that Jazz pricing is there or thereabouts. A starting figure that slots in just above the £14,000 price point makes the entry-level version of this car around £2,000 more than a base-spec rival Citroën C3 PureTech 82 and about £1,000 more than the humbler Skoda Fabia 1-litre TSI, while base-trimmed versions of the Renault Clio 1.2-litre TCE and the Suzuki Swift 1-litre booster jet cost about the same as this Honda. Otherwise, everything else that's directly comparable to a 1.3-litre Jazz costs more and offers less in terms of equipment and cabin space. You'll need around £1,000 more for a Seat Ibiza 1-litre TSI, a Peugeot 208 PureTech 82, and the 1-litre TGDI versions of Kia's Rio and Hyundai's i20, and around £2,500 more for a Ford Fiesta 1-litre T 100 PS, a Volkswagen Polo 1-litre TSI, or a Vauxhall Corsa 1.4i 100 PS. Switch your focus to the 1.5-litre iVTEC Sport 130 PS Jazz model we've been trying here, and there are far fewer direct alternatives. You might think that just over £17,000 for this top variant is a fair amount to find, but that's no more than you'd pay for a comparably sporty Seat Ibiza 1-litre TSI FR 115 PS model with 15 PS less. Look at direct rivals elsewhere and you'll find that this 1.5-litre Honda will save you over £1,000 on the Ford Fiesta 1-litre T 125 PS ST line and nearly £2,500 on a comparable Volkswagen Polo 1-litre TSI 115 PS R line. If, having considered all of that, you conclude it is a Honda Jazz that you really want, then you're going to need to know just how generous the Japanese brand's been with the standard spec. So, time for the detail on that. Even entry-level S models come with LED daytime running lights, auto headlamps and wipers, electric mirrors and all-round powered windows. Inside you get Honda's clever Magic Seat system, and that's along with a decent quality 180-watt 4-speaker DAB stereo setup. That features an iPod-compatible USB jack, an aux-in point and a CD player for all your old discs. Plus there's air conditioning, Bluetooth phone connectivity, a multi-information display trip computer, driver's seat height adjustment, a reclining rear seat, a fold-flat front passenger seat, a multifunction steering wheel and cruise control with a speed limiter to help preserve your licence through roadworks or urban areas. If you've decided on a Jazz but you want to treat yourself to something a bit nicer than S-level trim, then you have the choice of either finding the £1,500 premium Honda asks for its mid-range SE spec or finding a premium of £3,000 above S-level trim and going for the plushest EX variant. Now you'll need one of those plusher trim levels if you are going to have a car fitted with the Honda Connect 7-inch colour infotainment touchscreen with its DAB tuner, internet radio access and USB connectivity. You also get app integration and a clever mirror link function which will allow you to mirror your Android mobile handset screen onto the infotainment display. As a package, Honda Connect really completes the interior of this car, and once you have it, you'll have the opportunity to specify the optional Garmin navigation system, and that's offered at a premium of just over £600. Other highlights of SE trim include 15-inch alloy wheels, front and rear parking sensors, heated power folding mirrors, an alarm and a package of extra camera-driven safety items that we'll cover in a minute. If you can push the boat out and get yourself top EX trim, then the alloy wheels get larger 16-inch rims, and there's rear privacy glass, full LED headlights and front fog lights. Inside there's a rear view camera, 6 speakers for the stereo, leather for the steering wheel and the gear knob, and a smart keyless entry and start system. Here, though, we've opted for the more dynamic-looking sport variant, and that's the one that you have to go for to get the perkier 130 PS 1.5-litre engine. Now, this variant's based on mid-range SE spec, but it gets leather for the steering wheel and gear knob as part of a special orange-stitched interior. Outside, buyers are treated to a mild body kit featuring a rear spoiler, black-painted door mirrors, and 16-inch Berliner black wheels. Whichever variant you choose, the standard spec will probably cover most of what you're going to need, but if you do want to go further, then your dealer will be very happy to tell you about the various options on offer. The key one is probably the Garmin satellite navigation setup we just mentioned, but there's also plenty else. We would probably consider the boot tray with divider package, which Honda provides to compartmentalise the luggage area and which sits below the parcel shelf. There's also plenty else. There's an armrest console that can fit between the front seats and which features a sliding lid. There's brighter LED interior lighting, and there's a tailgate strap which will more easily help you to pull the rear hatch down. A roof rack and a detachable tow bar might also be of interest. Bear in mind too that if you don't want your Jazz painted in solid shades of either Milano red or sunset orange, you're going to need to pay Honda extra for one of the metallic or pearlescent paint colours. Here we've got the Skyride blue metallic shade that was introduced with this facelifted model range. Otherwise, the options are mainly aimed at aesthetic trimming and, to be frank, fairly unnecessary. You might like the tailgate spoiler, the side body trimming, the two alternative options when it comes to the design of the 15-inch alloy wheels, or the illumination pack with its white ambient footlights and glowing door sill finishes. There's nothing wrong with the premium pack, which will give you colour-matched side body trim, smart carpet mats and mud guards. If you like a bit of silver trim, there's also a chrome pack, which adds that to the tailgate, the front spoiler and around the side windows. On to safety, where the highlight standard fit feature across the range is Honda's City Brake Active System. That's an extra cost item on many rivals. It's there to scan the road ahead for potential collision hazards at speeds of under 20 miles an hour. If one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or you aren't able to, the car will automatically brake itself to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. Now that builds on the usual features that you'd now expect on a car of this kind: twin front, side and curtain airbags, anti-whiplash head restraints, ISOFIX child seat fastenings, a tyre deflation warning system and hill start assist. That's there to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions. Plus, there's the impressively strong basic rigidity of Honda's so-called ACE body structure, the advanced compatibility engineering approach which forms the foundation for excellent passive safety performance, enhancing occupant crash protection. What else? Well, there's stability control, of course, Honda's VSA, Vehicle Stability Assist System. Plus, there's the usual ABS braking setup with a brake assist feature to help in emergency stops, and those will be advertised to following motorists by automatically activating hazard lights. AHA, Agile Handling Assist, increases cornering traction, and there's an EDDB, Early Downshift During Braking System, which automatically increases engine speed to provide engine braking in deceleration, downhill or cornering situations. And there's also what Honda calls a fast off feature, which maintains engine revs if you come off the throttle pedal too quickly, as you might say if you've pulled out to overtake, but you suddenly have to abandon the manoeuvre. And that's the sort of scenario that might cause a skid on an icy morning. It's all very welcome, and this Jazz goes further still. Now, providing you avoid entry-level trim, your car will also come fitted with a package of 5 other key advanced driver assist features. Now you get a high beam support system which automatically dips your headlights for you at night in the face of oncoming traffic. Plus there's a forward collision warning setup which monitors the distance and the closing rate between you and the vehicle in front as you drive and warns you when you're too close. For peace of mind on longer distance journeys, there's also a lane departure warning system, and that stops dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. And there's a traffic sign recognition system, and that pictures road signs as you pass them and then displays them on the dash. Now this last named feature drives what is arguably the cleverest element of this impressive safety package, and that's the intelligent speed limiter. From the traffic sign recognition system, this setup knows what the prevailing speed limit is, and it won't let you break it unless you persist on the throttle. Now theoretically, that might make speeding tickets a thing of the past. Honda has a tradition of being at the cutting edge of petrol engine design, so it's something of a surprise to find that the Japanese company hasn't followed its Super Mini segment rivals and fitted this car out with the kind of modern 3-cylinder turbo 1-litre engine that virtually all competitors now offer. Now the brand does have a unit of that sort. It was developed for the next model up in the range, the 10th generation Civic, but that power plant wasn't ready at the time of this 3rd generation Jazz model's introduction back in 2015. So it can't be made available here. Instead, almost all Jazz models get a normally aspirated 4-cylinder 1.3-litre iVTEC petrol engine that uses the company's so-called Earth Dreams technology in creation of a power plant which is supposed to give you the power of a 1.4-litre unit along with the frugality of a 1.2-litre model. Inevitably, the end result still isn't as efficient as a 3-cylinder 1-litre rival would be, but the Mark III model Jazz development team did do what they could. You get a slippery shape, there's 6 rather than 5 speeds on the manual gearbox, and of course there's one of those stop-start systems to cut the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck at the lights or waiting in traffic. To improve its efficiency, this car's Euro 6 petrol power plant gets a high compression ratio, low levels of internal friction, an effective exhaust gas recirculation system, and electronic operation for the variable timing control to optimise valve timing. So that drivers can play their part. An Eco Assist function changes the backlight colour of the speedometer from white to green in fuel-efficient driving, and you'll be able to monitor that via fuel efficiency readings that are recorded in the info section of the Honda Connect infotainment screen. The optional Garmin navigation system also helps out with the option of so-called eco-routing. The result of all this should see the CVT automatic version of this car return 60.1 mpg on the combined cycle and 106 grams per kilometre of CO2. Now, unfortunately, the figures managed by the manual transmission version that most people will actually buy aren't quite so good, 55.4 mpg and 116 grams per kilometre. Do bear in mind that all these readings apply to a car fitted with 15-inch wheels, and they will worsen slightly if you have a top variant like this one with the 16-inch rims. Either way, though, you're not looking at class-leading efficiency here. To be fair to Honda, these figures would have been pretty good just a few years ago, and still today they match the older engine in this sector, the 1.1-litre TI VCT unit used by Ford in the base Fiestas, for example. Other comparably powerful 1-litre and 1.2-litre rivals, though, do rather better. Here we've been trying the 1.5-litre iVTEC 130 PS engine introduced as part of this model's facelift updates. How does that fare? Well, as with the 1.3, choosing the CVT transmission will help you. The auto variant returns 52.3 mpg on the combined cycle and 124 grams per kilometre of CO2. In a manual 1.5-litre model like this one, those figures fall to 47.9 mpg and 133 grams per kilometre. To give some class perspective on that, a similarly performing Seat Ibiza FR 1-litre TSI 115 PS rival manages 60.1 mpg and 108 grams per kilometre. Fortunately for Honda, though, running costs are about more than just fuel and CO2 readings, and when it comes to the all-important issue of residual values, this Jazz does claw back some ground. After 3 years and 60,000 miles, a typical Jazz 1.3 SE manual model would still be worth 40% of its original list price. That's an impressive showing by segment standards, and a far better one than you get if you had a rival Fiesta, Corsa, Clio, Fabia or Ibiza. You could also save money by purchasing a prepaid servicing plan. Here, a one-off payment of around £700 covers you over 5 years or up to 62,500 miles for labour, parts and maintenance costs. Honda reckons that buying this package would save a typical owner over £500 throughout the period of the plan. What else? Well, the 3-year, 90,000 mile warranty is better than the package that you'll get from many rivals, and when it expires, a Honda extended guarantee can be purchased either for a further 12 months or for a further 24 months, which will give you European breakdown cover and protection against mechanical and electrical faults. Tax-wise, virtually all 1.3 litre Jazz variants fall into VED Band C. Insurance, that's rated at Group 13E for all 1.3 litre variants. This 1.5 litre Sport variant is rated at Group 19A. Honda does things differently, and we can't help liking that. Whether the model in question is a Civic, a Clarity fuel cell vehicle or a Type R hot hatch, you'll find it's been uniquely engineered and packaged, as is the case with this Jazz. Now, this always used to be the Super Mini that motoring experts would recommend as a small car that they would buy with their own money. For us, it still is. We're not blind to its failings. Other class competitors are more refined and they offer higher quality cabins with more sophisticated infotainment, but none of them can get near the interior flexibility which is made possible by this Honda's neat magic seat flexibility and its TARDIS-like cabin. We go as far as to say that in many ways this Super Mini is a more practical choice than many focus segment family hatchbacks from the next class up. It's also a pleasant surprise to find that the Jazz has been so competitively priced, this despite the fact that it's one of the better equipped models in the segment. It's also one of the safest too. Now, we applaud Honda for making the City Brake Active system standard, and we reckon target owners will really like the way that the intelligent speed limiter will keep them on the right side of the law. As for the changes made to this third generation model, well, to be frank, they don't greatly alter its sales proposition. The uptake on this top 1.5 litre Sport variant is likely to be low, and beneath it in the range, the package remains pretty much as it was before. Just as well then that the packaging of this design remains so difficult to beat. Rivals have become classier, more dynamic and more upmarket. Whether they're also better where it really matters, though, is quite another question. For its loyal, dedicated band of buyers, this Jazz always will be. Try one and you'll understand.